Shalom, friends! Welcome to Orange Socks, a podcast celebrating Jewish creativity. I'm your host, Yitzchak Muli, inviting you to join me in exploring the soul of Jewish expression. Shalom, friends! Welcome to not the Muli Art Studio or the Orange Sock Studio. I'm with Leib Meadvin in your beautiful, messy, lived-in studio.
I think my wife would put messy before beautiful, bud.
Wow, we're artists. Come on, we know. Thank you for having me. You heard that I was going to be in Philly, and you made sure that this happened. So
Sure.
thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I think this is the first time I'm in your studio. I've seen your finished works, but this is cool. This is definitely a vibe. I'm loving it. And I dare say, I think this is even more messy than mine. So
What a plus! What a merit for me.
yes. So pleasure to be here. You've been listening to the Orange
Yes.
Socks podcast.
Very inspirational.
There you go. You see, the studio's moving on its own. That doesn't happen on mine. And you had what to share. So
Yes.
I've known you. I don't know how many years now, but I know there's so much that I don't know.
Right.
So.
Well, I think we first met when you did that festival in 2010.
The Jewish
Yeah.
Music and Art Festival.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. So that was part of my previous life. Blending two lives together.
Right.
Yeah. Those were good times. Yeah. So share. You got a longer, wider beard than me, so you definitely have a lot more stories than me. And as you know, this podcast is about the interplay of Judaism and creativity. And I get a feeling you got a lot to say. The floor is yours. You get to start wherever you see fit.
Right. Always a problem for me because.
Well, so let's start with your beginning. Let's start with your first foray into creativity. When your first creative experience.
Yeah, I mean,
I've
always had a creative side. Even back in elementary school, I always was considered like I was really good at making bubble letters.
Okay.
So that was like a big skill back in the 70s.
Where'd you grow up?
Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
I was born in Queens like every other Jew, but we moved to Cherry Hill when I was 7.
Okay.
I also remember the Hebrew school was a very big memory for me, but it was really strange. I remember even learning, the Chumash, and I was like, wow, there's all these things we're supposed to do. And I asked we had actually a rabbi with a beard and a black hat.
Okay. This is Queens or this is Cherry Hill?
It's Cherry Hill. And I said, wow, what about all these things it says? He goes, oh, nobody does that anymore.
Guy with a black hat and a beard said that?
Yeah.
Ouch.
So I don't know. And it was just something that I was like, okay, that's how it is. How did I know any different?
Oh, man.
And when I got into high school, I explored all different things. Silk screening was a big thing. I would do the covers for our fraternity magazines and different things like that. But I was also like a real math and science guy.
Oh, okay.
But the real passion of mine in high school was music. That was a pretty much driving force for my entire life. But
started in high school.
But definitely started in high school, and was informed a lot of my decisions about what I did with my life going to college and how I spent my time in college.
Right.
But I had a roommate freshman year of college who had just come back from his senior year in Israel, like a high school in Israel probably. He went to a community day school, and they spent the second half of the year in Israel.
Which college were you in?
This was at Franklin and Marshall.
Okay. Where is
You're supposed to say, which college weren't you in? This was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right.
So my friend Svi, the first day I met him, he said, we have to go junior year abroad to Israel. I'm like, okay, sounds great. I had never been there.
Okay.
It sounded like a great thing to do. Um, I was studying computers at the time, and I spent a year there. Then I spent a year mainly following the Grateful Dead, sort of in class, and then and then another year following the Grateful Dead, and then we went to Israel. Well, Tzvi called me up. He said, "Oh, it's time to send the applications in for Israel. Where should we go? Tel Aviv University or Jerusalem or Hebrew U?"
Right.
I said, "I don't have any idea." He goes, "Well, Hebrew U's in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv University's in
Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv." And he said, "Tel Aviv is like New York, and Jerusalem's like Lancaster,
Right.
where the college was." I said, "Wow, I guess it's Tel Aviv."
Right. Right.
So
It's interesting referring to Jerusalem, comparing Jerusalem to Lancaster.
right.
That's not my.
Well, he knew that was my favorite reference
Okay.
from how exciting,
Right.
you
Oh,
know,
right. Okay.
Franklin and Marshall College was.
Right.
Anyway, so we went there, and it was amazing.
Right.
It was. I still remember we had there were very few actually like Torah related classes at Tel Aviv University, but I happened to have one,
Oh.
The
Okay.
Essence of Judaism, and
From a Torah perspective.
yeah, it was taught by a frum guy who he was actually a math professor at the university, and he was filling in for someone else who was on sabbatical.
Right.
And I just remember the cool thing was he didn't care what people thought about him. Like it wasn't cool to follow rules.
Right.
And someone said, "Well, it's okay if I'm driving on Shabbos to shul." He
Right.
says, I'm sorry, but it's not."
Right.
And I was like so impressed that everyone else, not just every other teacher, everyone else always like thinking about what are people gonna think about them,
Right.
and want to look good and
Right.
want to make a good impression. And this guy just was like, "This is who I am."
He had a set of values. And
Yeah.
It is what it is.
So by the end of the year, I had decided to go to yeshiva.
That's pretty wild. It's not what one would expect from, spend a year in Tel Aviv at a university. That the
Well, there were, a bunch of things happened. We had gone to Jerusalem for the holidays,
Right.
in Tishrei, and I was actually ready to like leave and go to yeshiva right away.
Oh,
And then when I got back to Tel Aviv University, let's just say the party on the roof that was going on the roof of the dorms, made me forget about going to yeshiva.
fair enough.
But by the end of the year, one thing led to another, and that was my plan. So I come home, and
yeshiva stateside?
no, Israel.
Israel. Okay.
Yeah,
Right. Do it for real.
Yeah. So my parents, of course, wanted me to finish college.
Right.
And there was a guy from Cherry Hill who had become observant in high school and, went to Yeshiva University and became a doctor, and great success story.
Oh, okay.
So they convinced me to go there.
To Yeshiva University.
Yeah.
Okay. And not Yeshiva in Israel.
Right. So that lasted for one semester.
Okay.
Which the obviously everything, Hashem has a plan for everything. And when I was there and exposed to the art scene in New York, I'm like, whoa, what am I doing studying computers? This is what speaks to me.
Yeah.
I remember one of my favorite artists is Keith Haring.
Okay.
And that's when you would see the subway drawings.
Right.
And when I went to see Black Uhuru at the Ritz, before the show, they had an animated Keith Haring video on the screens. And I was starting to recognize,
Right.
I said, wow, this is really...
What years was this?
This was 83, 84.
Okay.
So anyway, I went back to Or Sameach.
Okay.
And it was not my vibe. Everyone was always trying to tell everyone else what to do. And the best thing you could do there, and again, everyone has their own path, but the ultimate thing you could do is stay in the yeshiva till you get married, and then move into the apartments next door to the yeshiva, and still stay in the yeshiva.
Right.
And I was like, what about everybody else?
Right.
All my friends and family and everybody who's not in in the know and in the bubble.
Right.
And I actually at the time made an analogy. There were people who would go to a concert and they want to be right up against the stage because they want the best possible experience for themselves.
Right.
But we were like always out in the hallway, like, popping open doors so people without tickets could run in, or taking stubs and throwing them out through an open door so they could, glue them together. And this is before scanning, so you could
Right.
get away with a lot more
Right.
and make fake tickets and how they could get in. Because that was the thing. You wanted everybody inside. You wanted everyone to share
Right.
in what
Right.
you were experiencing. You didn't want it wasn't any better if it was just you.
That's so Chabad-esque.
Right. Well, you could see how I ended up where I ended up. Um, so anyway, I left there and I came back to New York, and I was going to School of Visual Art in Manhattan.
All right. So why you behind, or Sameach behind? You're
Yeah,
doing the
and I
arts.
was really looking for the place where I fit in. I knew that Judaism was my path. I mean, by birth and by just feeling it.
Right.
Um,
But not something that you got from home from your parents, but more your own journey.
yeah, I mean, we had a pretty traditional upbringing. We had the holidays, and we had Shabbos dinner. I mean, we had some of the things. It wasn't like an observant lifestyle, but
Right.
there was enough for me to feel like
An awareness.
I knew I believed in God, right? And that's a lot.
It's a good first step.
So I was searching around. I was going to art school. I was going to shows, concerts, music shows, and but every Shabbos I would try to get to something where I would see if that's the place where I fit in.
That's so
And
awesome.
it was really interesting. Again, Hashem rules the world. That Hanukkah, there were two Shabboses,
Right.
and where I lived down near the Jersey Shore at the time, and I had met this guy in the supermarket one of the weeks when I was staying down there, and I asked him where. I could tell he was wearing a black hat and a suit, and a long-haired freak came up to him and
Right.
asked him where to get a challah.
Right. Right.
But so he invited me over for Shabbos. So I was by him the first Shabbos of Hanukkah, and I told him what was up with me, and he said, "Oh, there's this rabbi. He works with college students at Rutgers. Maybe you want to talk to him and see
Right.
what's next for you." And by the way, I had never heard of Chabad at this point.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I had heard like references to it,
Right.
like, I'm going to Crown Heights at Simchas Torah,
Okay.
or I remember even sitting in Jerusalem at somebody's table, and a soldier was arguing with the guy with the balabas, the household, about why doesn't the Rebbe come to Israel?
Okay.
But I didn't know what he was talking about,
Right.
but it all flashed back to me. So anyway, the next Shabbos, it was two Shabbos Hanukkahs. I saw an ad in the Village Voice, which is a long time ago in itself,
Yes.
and it says, "Turn Friday night into Shabbos with Shlomo Karlbach." Now, when I was at Tel University, we would go on a tiul like maybe once a month. Like, it was a 3-day thing, and it wasn't luxurious accommodations, it wasn't great food, but by Sunday we were ready to get back.
Okay.
We'd had the same meal 4 times in a row. So we're driving back in the bus. Say, "Oh, we're stopping off at this moshav for dinner, and this rabbi's going to talk to us."
Right.
So we're like, screw that. Take us back. Take us back. We've had enough.
Right.
And we get there, and all they have out are bowls of oranges.
Oh wow.
They're like a mutiny of,
Right.
Anyway, the doors open into like an auditorium, and there's this band of hippies playing. It's not the Moshav band, it's the parents of the Moshav band.
Right.
The OG.
Right.
And it was amazing. It was like the greatest show. Like, everyone was dancing, and it was fantastic. And we actually brought them to Tel University to play at our Purim party.
Okay.
So anyway, but Reb Shlomo actually wasn't there.
Right.
And then when I was in Or Sameach, our Gemara shir, the rabbi was, I'm not going to say his first name, was Rabbi Blank Carlbach. And my roommate said, hey, do you have I heard you have a cousin who plays guitar.
Right.
And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So this was certainly intrigued me.
Right.
So I said, you know what? I'm going for the Shabbos. And
So when you were on the Moshav, you didn't know that it was connected to Shlomo Carlebach.
I might have heard the name, but I
it
didn't
Right. Right. Okay.
didn't know what it was that meant. So I go for that Shabbos Friday night. I had never heard anyone talking to Hashem before that. And Reb Shlomo davened Friday night. I mean, it was incredible. That Shabbos, at the end, I spoke to him a lot about, where's my future. And he had actually gave me his card. He said, give me a call. You'll come to our shul on the west side for Shabbos. I'm like, all right, great. I get home, and on Sunday I get a call. Hi, this is Rabbi Carlbach. I'm like, whoa, how'd you get my number?
Right.
He goes, well, I got it from Rabbi Beta.
Right.
That was the guy who I was over his house for Shabbos. Rabbi Yossi Carlbach is the shaliach at Rutgers.
Yes.
So
small world.
And that was it.
Right.
That was, where the Chabad journey started for me. He was the rabbi in Asbury Park, actually, at the time.
Oh, wow.
He had like a shul. He was there on Shabbos, and it was at Rutgers during the week. And I started going to him, and he said, you should, go back to yeshiva. And I was traveling around. It's funny, he didn't actually ever say go to Chabad yeshiva, which I thought was interesting, because from my experience in Jerusalem, I didn't think you could like become Hasidic, right? Because no one was like, when you met people in Mea Shearim, you weren't joining up. They might be very nice,
right,
and have you over for meals, but you weren't joining up with them.
Right. There was no sign-up sheet.
So a few weeks later, I was the Shabbos before Grateful Dead tour started. I was at my brother's university in Maryland, and I'm sitting there and I'm having the greatest time of my life at the Chabad. And I said to the shliach, I said, I can't believe I wasn't born Chabad. And this is like the funniest thing he's ever heard, because especially at that time, like the majority of people weren't born Chabad.
Right, sure.
So I decided right then I was going to Chabad Yeshiva.
I'm doing Chabad.
Yeah. And that was the beginning of that. I came back. I was in Morristown for a while, and then I went back to art school and finished my undergrad. And in undergrad, I was doing a lot of, because I had been a computer science major, and so I could finish up at Rutgers, I did a lot of computer graphics and animation. They had the departments merged together, so it was sort of on the cutting edge of.
And what years is this?
I graduated from Rutgers in '89.
Okay, so it's computers are making their inroads.
Yeah,
things are getting together. Yeah, warming.
Right. It was changing super fast, and then and I certainly wasn't interested in commercial aspect. I wanted to be an artist.
Right.
So I went and looked, and the price of the hardware and the software at that time was insane, and it was becoming obsolete like overnight. So we moved to New York. By the time I graduated undergrad, I was married and had a kid, and we moved to New York. And I never really got a job. I started doing a lot of woodworking, was another thing that I had done in undergrad, and mainly selling jewelry at concerts, which was something I always liked to do. And that's what I did for probably the next 4 or 5 years, And then someone was I was living in Philly, and someone was taking a class at the Clay Studio, which is like an artist collective right in Old City in Philadelphia. They have classes, and they have like studio space and just a place to do clay.
Right.
So they said, why don't you come take a class? So I went, and right away the contrast was amazing, because I realized that aside from like a few improvements in technology and stuff, it was basically being done the same way that has been done forever. Right? There's clay. You take dirt and you make clay, and
you shape it,
and make the glazes with some chemical, with some colorants and ground up glass, and then you put it in something that makes it hot. And they might have better things that better kilns now, but it's the same process. And after my experience with computers, like, this is the way.
Contrast of computers,
that was like a big thing in the beginning. And I just love touching clay. I mean,
so at your time in art school, you weren't exposed to clay, apparently.
No, I did. I mean, most of the design I did was like working with woodworking and plastics, plexiglass, and those were the main three-dimensional stuff that we did. Otherwise, it was all 2D. So this was a time when I was also going through a lot of growth with, with learning Torah, a lot of Shlomo Carlebach and a lot of Chabad Hasidus. And I started thinking about like how to meld the things together. The first few years, I was working mainly making vessels, and there was this Torah from Reb Shlomo talking about, I wish I had written down because I'm sure I'm going to screw it up, but basically that the letters of Hashem's name, they can be written all different permutations. But the way, when two letters are paired together, there's the way the blessings are coming down, and then there's the letters that represent having the vessels. And when that's the ultimate way, and when the blessings come down and there's no vessels, or the vessels come first, no, when the blessings come first without the vessels, they're lost. The biggest tragedy. And when the vessels, you have the vessels and the blessings come, the greatest bracha, the greatest blessing. So that was it. I just wanted to make vessels and all different shapes and styles and decorations, and sell them, hopefully, or just give them to people. Because I wanted to give them like a like make, that's what we always say. Like, you need a bracha, make a vessel for it. Whether it's through a mitzvah. So I was just like sort of making the physical manifestation of it.
That's brilliant. I love that. Yeah, because and it blends your Judaism and your creativity so much together.
And then the other thing,
so many people are making clay, mugs. Clay mugs is the standard, but it's a mug. It's a functional piece. But you're not making a functional piece for the sake of being a functional piece. You're making it to be a vessel for blessings and coffee.
So I mainly did like bowls, like bigger things, like bowls and vases, because I like to decorate things. And what it was always from the beginning a thing with me is putting messages on them. So whether it's a verse from a Grateful Dead song, or from Bruce Springsteen song, or from Tehillim, or from Tanya, I want things that not can someone just look at it, but make them think about something.
So you're infusing meaning, not just in the process and the idea, but
right.
Here. You can't miss it.
So that was my first period, let's call it the vessel period. Around, I also at some point there started doing the tile mosaics, making the tiles, and I started that, but it wasn't as big a thing. Anyway, around that time, that was for a good 8 years. I had a big studio at home. We lived in a different area than we live now.
And that was full time? That was
No. That's when I started teaching.
So what subjects do you teach? It's
math,
right?
Because like, why not? Well, I wanted to. If you're going to have a job, you might as well have one that there's always a need for, right? Like, what's the first thing that gets cut in the budget is art teachers. And so math, I was always good at, and and there's actually so much math and problem solving in art. Which people don't realize. But when you're a math guy, you see it very clearly. So I started we moved out here, and I started teaching at this high school where I've now been teaching 20 years. This is like fall of '85. This
Right.
is my 20th year there.
Wow.
And for a while, I didn't have a studio. Like when I parted, they were going to have it set up. They were going to have a studio for me at the school so I could still do clay and maybe do some
Cool.
classes with kids. But let's just say that they don't even know what happened to the kiln that I brought over there.
Just everything disappeared.
But around shortly after that, Matisyahu came onto the scene.
Okay.
And that became like a really big thing with me. And within a year, I was working for him.
Okay.
You know, I was his, I was, I mean, it's funny to say I was his social media guy,
Right.
which meant like I would see who were his top five MySpace people and posting content to MySpace.
Right. Right.
Right. Like I was way out of my league once real social media came around.
Okay.
But my son-in-law, that's actually how I met my son-in-law, because Matisyahu had gone to Hadar Torah Yeshiva in Crown Heights,
Wow.
where my Mechutan
Yeah.
is the Mashpia.
Right. Right.
So anyway, we had an amazing time. We would travel around with him on tour. I would film his concerts. Then I sort of I don't know what the word transformed into his archivist. So
Okay. So
having
I knew you guys were connected, but I didn't know.
so
Like,
having all the
you started
audio,
off working for him.
yeah, having all the audio of his all the audio and video and arranging for people to film and photograph his concerts. So again, not a full-time job, still teaching math, but that was fulfilling another one of my burning passions. So there wasn't really an art thing going on then.
Right.
For until there was my son-in-law, who runs an art gallery,
Yes.
said, we're having this group show, and I'd love to put one of your mosaics in it. And so I went down. I was in the show, and I was like, what was I doing? How was I not doing this?
How'd you let this vessel go?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have so many things going on and so much stuff that I love to do. It's a lot of times you're juggling like what direction you're pulled in so many directions. So I went to after that show, that was maybe 2016. The Matisyahu thing was sort of dying down anyway, as far as like my role there. So I went back to the clay studio.
Right.
That's a place that I knew, and I started working there with a passion. Like
Oh wow.
I was driving them nuts. Most people, they go there, they make like one piece every 3 weeks.
Right.
During the summer, they have open studio hours,
Right.
and I was there every day cranking out mosaics, which could have 100 tiles in them each one.
Wow.
And I was like, I mean, I can understand I was overwhelming the system.
Right.
Like the kiln techs were like, if they saw me coming, would be like, get this guy out of here. So
Because it was an all you can eat kind of arrangement. Like you come and use
yeah.
as much clay as you want and as much.
Well, the clay you had to pay for, but it was
Kiln
taking up the
time.
room in the kiln.
Right.
Like I would put trays of tiles on the shelf,
Right.
and they would have to load them into the kiln and unload them from the kiln. So I knew, like, I was there basically 3 months, and I knew I was going to have to get my own setup.
Right.
So that fall, I had a show at the gallery, my first show at the gallery.
Solo show.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So that was when I started a lot of the mosaics I was doing with mirrors in them.
Okay.
And so that show is called A Reflection of You. So this was all based on, well, I wouldn't say my translation was exactly the way it's from Mishlei, about as water mirrors a face, a heart responds to another.
Right.
And the way that it's understood in Tanya, I probably took some liberties with that. But I basically felt like, when a person's looking into a mirror, it was more than just a reflection. It actually was, connected to their heart and their emotions, and everything else is all on display. And I always remembered about I went to a Sheva Brachas with my friend in Israel like 20 years earlier, and I remember someone giving a drush about how um, why did everyone meet at the well, right? Eliezer went to the well to find Rivka,
Right.
and Yaakov went to the well where he found Rachel,
Right.
and Moshe went to the well and saw Tzipporah,
Right.
because at the time, I don't know if this is historically accurate, but I think it is. At the time, they didn't have mirrors. The only time people could look at themselves
Was in the water.
was in water.
Right.
They see their reflection in the water. And it wasn't just about, hey, I want to see what I look like before my date.
Right.
It was like, who am I? What's going on with me? I want to really see myself. I need to go to the water to see myself.
Right. Right.
So I wanted people to think about that.
Right.
And, when they look in and then of course I wanted to put quotes around the mirror that either something that I thought was inspirational, or really ideally something they thought was inspirational. So like a lot of commissions I had were, what makes you think about that? What's relevant to you? And put that out on there, and that's how we went. That's how it went. Now, unlike, I was very jealous of you. I could tell you, we were at a JLI retreat in Providence.
Yes, I remember that.
And I had my mirrors and you had your art. And I saw those posters you had were flying off the shelf.
Yeah.
And I thought like it's crazy. I choose like the one non-reproducible thing. And there wouldn't even be a way to make a poster of the mirror.
Right.
So I started actually doing a lot of non-mirror work.
Okay.
I say that's mainly what I do now. I haven't actually got it, even though I probably asked you about it a few years ago already. I actually haven't graduated to making posters of the work.
Oh, really?
But that's something is like,
Let's talk. I'll help you.
But yeah, it's I mean, still I'm involved with art. I'm involved with music. I mean,
Do you play music?
no, it's
So that's something
crazy.
interesting. Yeah, that like you're saying, you followed the Dead,
Yeah,
and now you follow Fish,
yeah,
and it's so much part of you, yet you don't play yourself. How
right.
do you
Well,
how does that?
first of all, even though I love the music, it's incredibly powerful and inspirational. But really, and this is actually also tied in with the whole journey of to Judaism. When I was a kid and I started following the Grateful Dead, aside from the music, and I always would say, hey, you know what? They're only playing for 3 to 4 hours a day.
Right.
The rest of the time when you're on tour, it's just the tour life, and it's about the community.
Right.
Because unfortunately, in like growing up, I was conservative, but I saw in Reform, and even unfortunately, in a lot of types of Orthodoxy, there's not that community that people
Right.
are looking for.
Right.
I mean, I went to Grateful Dead tour to find it, and I think there's definitely a disproportionate amount of Jews following the Grateful Dead and following Fish,
Right.
because they're searching for that community. If they don't find it in their Jewish community, they're going to go look for it somewhere else. And a lot of them, unfortunately, they never then find it in the beauty of the Jewish community.
That's so true. The Fish. I mean, first time I did do a Fish show in Madison Square Gardens, which is one of their residencies at the end of the
Yeah.
year. But just recently, thanks to you,
Uh-huh.
I got to help set up what we call, Shabbat tent
Right.
at a fish festival down in somewhere Delaware. And yeah, we brought a Torah and we did a whole Shabbos there. We made a chicken soup, and it was, yeah, getting to see that community, and getting to see the overlap of the Jewish community within the fish community. And there is such, yeah, community. Community is like it's a simple word, but like it's the best way to describe it. It's like a whole diverse group of people, but there's there's a common energy and there's a common bond, and there's so much, mutual respect, even though everyone's
Mm-hmm.
doing their own thing, and yes,
Right.
and really, I didn't see any of it, and I was told afterwards, or someone posted afterwards, that like the whole festival, which was like a month ago, was like post October 7th, there was no hate.
Right.
There was none of hate from the other side.
Right.
Whereas many other music festivals, there's so much of that hate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's something really powerful to find community there.
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting. It was probably maybe 15 years ago. I don't know if they still do it. There was an idea, a Jewish culture shook, where like on a Saturday night or a Sunday night in a community, they would meet at one of the synagogues, and all the rabbis, it was actually really nice, from whatever denomination would come,
right,
and in 2 sessions they would offer 2 different classes, um, on whatever topic they wanted, whatever
right,
appealed to them.
right.
So I see someone sent me a flyer. This guy, um, was giving a talk, Judaism and the Grateful Dead. So I look at the name, and I had met this guy once in my life, when before I started high school. My parents had me go to this like USY encampment, and
USY is what?
like the conservative youth group.
Okay,
So it was up at one of the Ramah camps after the season ended.
right.
They had like a week of USY encampment. So I went up there, and I just remember this was before high school, and I had, you know, minimal experience with the Grateful Dead, but there was these 2 brothers, Saul Greif, and I forget the other guy's name, who had actually been to many Grateful Dead shows.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, those guys are the coolest. So I look and I see Rabbi Saul Greif is giving this class.
Right.
So I didn't know what it was going to be like, but I said, I just got to go see this guy and
Sure.
see him again after 40 years or something. And he starts talking about all the things people loved about following the Grateful Dead. And then he says, if you like that, you're really going to love Judaism.
Ah,
And
right,
that was it. It was like, if people knew,
right.
they might still follow the Grateful Dead, but they would know see what the beauty in the Jewish community.
I'd love to believe that that's true across the board, but yeah, you're right that there really is this palpable community at the great at the fish festivals, where you may or may not feel that within certain parts of the Jewish community, or you really have to work for it. But also, that's a weekend. That's an exception to reality. Everyone
Unless
goes
you're on
out.
tour.
Well, but then it's a constant escape from. No, it's not escape from reality, but it's like the Jewish community definitely can be, and you can
Oh yeah,
there's
well, I mean, for sure, there is
right,
definitely
right. There's
a,
that
there's definitely
underlying
many places in the Jewish community that have that.
right,
But it's unfortunately it's all the people who aren't exposed to it,
right, right,
right? Like if you grow up in a very strong community with like a beautiful network of people, you're not necessarily going to look for anything else.
right.
But because I think it's our nature to be searchers and searching for that, then if we don't find it in our community, then we're drawn to go look for it everywhere else
Right.
until we find it.
So I don't know I'm going to ask it anyway, but did Judaism not fill your vessel enough that you still needed the Grateful Dead? You still needed fish? Does the community and the Jewish experience that you have, is that not enough? Or
Well, so as far as the community, I mean, I've always been like dreaming about the Jewish music that would fill that place for me, just
right,
as far as the music goes. I mean, I remember it was not that wasn't New Year's Eve, because that was on Friday. This was Thursday night in 1999, the day before the millennium,
oh right,
and I had just heard about Soul Farm. I think they might have still been called Innocence then,
right, right,
and they were playing at the Lion's Head or something, some club in the village,
right,
and I drove up there, and like I mean, I was already like in my mid 30s, but there were all these like kids there,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and like this is amazing, like a band that jams and is great and passionate, and Jewish kids have something to connect to and say, hey, there's something there's something Jewish I can connect to.
right.
Um, And Moshav opened. I had never even heard of Moshav before that. And it just never took off enough.
Right. Okay.
And then there was Matisyahu.
Right.
And now there's Zusha,
Right.
which are all great. I mean, I love Matisyahu,
Right.
but it's still, I mean, I don't Jerry Garcia.
Right.
Like here, I mean, the passion and the feeling of listening to him. I was just listening to a show the other day. Usually, like, I'll go, there's an app where you can listen to shows and you just say shows from this date.
Okay.
So, like, I was listening to a show I was at in Colorado at Red Rocks in 1985. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I'm listening to Jerry sing Birdsong, do I need to listen to anything else? Just like the way he was able to emote the feelings and everything. But so that's still a thing for me, the music.
Right.
But now when I go there, I go out there as a chassid and I'm connecting with people.
Right.
Even if they don't even talk to me or anything, but they say, "Oh, that's cool. There's a Hasidic Jew here."
Right. Right.
This friend of mine was in yeshiva in Jerusalem. He was like, totally straight guy, suit and hat, and he's on the bus one day and he sees a guy, in a jean jacket, long hair, but he knows he knows enough that he sees he has a little Grateful Dead pin.
Right.
And he goes up to him and he says, "Hey, Grateful Dead," and he was able to make a whole connection with him.
Right. Right.
Because he figured, hey, we have something Leib in common, right? So I mean, when we go to concerts, we have a minyan, like we're not like at a festival, but every show there's a WhatsApp group where we try to have Ma'ariv in between set breaks, and we could have 100 people there davening Ma'ariv together.
Right. People who may not otherwise care to daven Ma'ariv.
Right, but a lot of people just come, and even if they don't even daven, but they come there and they see all the Jews together.
Right.
So this past New Year's run, we always sing after the davening, but we said, we got to do something really strong.
Right.
And we sang on New Year's Eve. We sang Am Yisrael Chai, and it was just like everyone. It was just so intense. And then there was a guy there who had just gotten married, and we made Sheva brachas for him at the show,
Right.
In between sets. But there's just Jews. I mean, there's Jews everywhere. And like I said, Jews are particularly attracted to these things. And I'm not saying it's totally selfless that I'm going, because I love the music. It's very important to me.
Right.
But I also love going there and meeting with Jews, and like a festival is like the greatest thing, because we're there for Shabbos and meet so many people. We've done been doing Shabbos tents for so long. It's just and it's the best Shabbos. I mean, being outside on Shabbos, like the whole Shabbos.
Right. In a tent.
Yeah.
There with yeah. No, I got to experience it. It really is awesome. I'm trying to like what to compare it to. I mean, there's different shlichus modes.
Right.
There's suburbia. And there's like a long-term relationship, and then there's the mitzvah tanks on the other extreme.
Mhm.
Excuse me, are you Jewish? And you get a mitzvah quick and you keep running.
Right.
And then this is like somewhere in between, because you get to potentially spend a whole weekend with someone and have some really deep conversations, but then everyone goes off on their way.
Right.
So being able to have it.
Do you ever hear of Shmuel Skaist?
I haven't, no.
He's a Hasidic guy in Muncie. So in 1999, this was before I even was involved, knew about fish really, or I mean had seen them or anything. He had sort of a mitzvah tank. He called this organization Gefilte Fish.
Okay.
He would travel around in an RV,
right,
and just hang out at shows and have tea and coffee for people and just schmooze with them.
Right.
And back then especially, there were a lot of college kids.
Right.
Now they're all grown ups.
It's the same college kids,
yeah.
A lot older.
But then it was really cool. He would keep in touch with them, and during off season, let's say, he would go to the campuses and give classes, and they would be so into him, they would come to these classes.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, look, really, what they need is a full-time shliach doing
Right.
this.
Right.
I mean, for me, that's about the. I know everyone has like an amazing potential, but for me, in the art world and in the music world, that's where I feel like that's the best place for my shlichus to take place,
Right.
because that's what I know, so that's how I can connect to people,
Right.
right? In other situations, I might not have as much to connect with the people about,
Sure.
and give and share with them.
Yeah. No. And yeah, having common ground. Is the classic line: words that come from the heart enter the heart.
Right.
So finding common ground, finding be it a concert or whatever, you know, common ground. Yeah, really gives you an in to be able to connect. Yeah. So that's you. You're living, in the Mashiach world. It sounds like you got it all covered. You got a job which pays the bills. You're still teaching math. You got your beautiful studio. You got your music. You got your daughter and son-in-law run this beautiful gallery downtown.
Yeah.
So you get to go there. Is it walkable from here?
We've walked it. I
Yeah,
mean,
walked it.
well, you did Miami. You know what? Everything's walkable.
Everything's walkable.
I mean, Holly and I will wake up on, Shabbos morning and walk. It's 8 miles.
Same
We
miles.
just
Okay.
walk down there.
Okay.
They'd start davening later
Right.
in town, so
Okay.
we're right on time. Or I'll go to shul here and we'll walk down and get there in time for lunch.
Right.
Or
Right. No, it's wonderful. This idea of searching, and many people are searching, and it sounds like you're not that you've finished searching. That's but you've found, and you found your purpose, and you found your what you're here to do, and the impact that you can and do have.
right. It's I mean, I feel very blessed about that because a lot of people don't never find that.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm blessed. I believe this is what my soul came down to this world
Hmm.
to do is my art and being able to connect with others through the arts. Yeah.
Right.
So
And
we're
I mean, in Chabad, it's very clear to people, but sometimes to other people, they're like, "Well, why did I go through all that stuff? That was bad."
right. Right.
I don't. That was not necessary. That I had to grow up not from or something.
Right.
But like you can see how everything you do informs your life, and you were there. You were there. That's where Hashem sent you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, the ultimate of that is the letter that Miriam Rhodes, this Mayor and Miriam Rhodes,
Uh-huh.
legends. And I was actually their neighbor. When I lived in Crown Heights, spent 4.5 years in Crown Heights as a child.
Right.
They were across the road, and I remember their backyard, gritty Brooklyn in the '80s, and they had like a big vegetable garden, sunflower. I remember the sunflowers, and now they're in Bat Ayin,
Yeah.
and they don't have children of their own, but they're the grandparents of like
Right.
so
Right.
many people who come through and connect and share. But Miriam went on a whole journey, and the journey included the Far East and all sorts of religions and all sorts of other practices that were definitely not Judaism. And once she became frum, she wrote to the Rebbe and said, "How will I ever repair my soul? I dragged my soul through all this mud, through all this spiritual mud. Eventually finding Judaism. How do I atone for that? How do I do tshuva for that?" And I imagine that Rebbe said,
I only heard it secondhand through Yossi Jacobson,
"Okay,
but
well,
you heard
that's
it
cool."
from the.
I don't think I heard it. I don't think I've heard it from her directly. I should ask her to like get a quote from her. Should get her on the podcast. That's for sure. That Rebbe said every step that you took was one step closer to Judaism.
Well, also he said from Pirkei Avos, if a person searches, I don't remember what exactly quote, but I think this is what I think from what I heard, this is the Rebbe said, if a person seeks and finds, then you believe them. If they don't, I don't remember the
Well,
exact.
it's one of the 12 psukim. Yagaita matzasa tamid. If you put an effort and you succeed, you believe. Like that's the method. I don't know if that's the same thing that you
Right,
were
but I
finding.
think in Pirkei it also says it says the opposite. Like if a person didn't search
Right,
and finds,
right,
then you don't believe them.
right.
But so you searched and you found, so
I believe.
that's the
Right. So
truth.
that's one of the it's one of the 12 psukim.
Yeah,
There's 3 lines. Whatever, all as you just said, yeah. But you search, you find, then you believe. That's
right.
yeah. Life's a journey. Life's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And you got to
So, what's your advice?
well, it's funny because every time I listen to your other podcasts, I know you ask that question at the end, and I always think about what would I say if it was me?
So, Leib, what would you say?
And that's the thing. Like if you when you're on that journey, you have to be aware. You want to pay attention to everything around you. You're not like just getting to the destination. I mean, the stories I could tell you about are journeys from like just going to concerts and
Right,
like everything that happened on the way
right,
was more memorable in some ways than the concert.
right,
Um, and all that you can't like go out and decide, hey, I'm gonna make art,
right,
and you sit down and like it's always like cliche, like a guy sitting at a typewriter ready to write a book, and he,
right,
is just sitting there because he has nothing to
right,
say. You have to not even generate organically experience things
right,
and then translate them into whatever medium you want to work in
right.
and be inspired by things that you learn or that you see in life. But as opposed to the other way of just like deciding to make the art,
Right, right.
you have to live a life that inspires you to make the art.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, no, it's yeah, it's as you said, it's the journey, but it's that it's not direct, it's not linear. You
No,
can't just sit
no.
down and okay, now I'm going to. But it's the way I talk to my children about it is the idea of das,
Hmm.
as chachma being on das, and das is personalizing it. So it's we all experience so many things every day, every month, but which part of that experience talks to you? That the getting to the concert, rather more so than the concert itself, potentially. So life experience,
Yeah.
getting out there. All right. Well, any other advice you have for me or for young creatives or for or wisdoms that you've picked up along the way? Anything else you want to share?
I guess it just um goes back to being open to experiences. Um, having well, I guess if I had to say something, it would be whoever you are, you want to be yourself in every situation you go into. I mean, it's I don't want to say it's a no-brainer for me, but it's like I've been like, let's say we done a Shabbos tent. And when it's Shabbos, I'm wearing a kapata and I'm wearing my Shabbos clothes.
Right.
And it's Shabbos of Varchim, and I'm sitting there in a Shabbos tent saying the whole Tehillim.
Right.
And I'm bringing my daf yomi and my chitas and everything else because I can't go there and be someone else,
Right.
right? I'm not going there to fit into what's going on. I'm going there as a chassid,
Right.
and I want to share that's what I want to share with people. I don't want to like need to fit in with them. I'm happy for them to share with me who they are, but um, we're all unique and we all
Right.
have our place in the world, and we need to remember that.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. So on the way in, I saw a photo of you upstairs with long hair receiving $1 from the Rebbe.
Yeah.
Did you get any? I don't know if you're too late for Yechidus, but did you get any direct advice, wisdom from the Rebbe in terms of your creativity? Did that ever come up?
I was definitely too late for Yechidus. I got advice in other, in Hayom Yom. I saw things that I would say advised me. I mean, I remember when one of the things right at the time when I started deciding to get, even besides that group show, it's the Hayom Yom. I'm sure I'll misquote it, but it's talking about how if a person has a skill of being a jewelry maker,
A diamond cutter.
a diamond cutter, and is only going to break baked bread. Not that baking bread isn't important.
Right.
There's some very negative, not something very negative of it.
If I remember correctly, they're doing a disservice. It's either to themselves and society, or maybe just themselves, or they're not living up to their potential.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so for me, even though I still do it, teaching math was baking bread, and art was the diamond cutter.
Right.
So I saw it was like, and I, not that I hadn't seen it every year before that, but I saw it at the time, and it hit me right at that time that I needed to see it.
It's interesting. That didn't talk to me until someone introduced me. A rabbi that I know introduced me at one of my talks, one of my tours down in at his center, and he introduced me with that, and I thought it was sacrilegious, like as he's saying it, and then with time, yeah, this is us.
Look, it's
Cutting
not.
diamonds.
It's not. I work full time. It would be easy to not have any hobbies, come back
Right.
from work, kick my feet up,
Right.
But when you have that fire burning in you, you can't just you can't quench it.
Yeah.
You have to. If this is your passion, you need to do it. Whether you have 5 hours a week or 50 hours a week, you've got to do something to because you feel that's what you're supposed to be doing, so you got to do it, or otherwise you're just gonna always be yearning for it.
Leib, thank you so much.
Thank you.
היום נעשה משהו בלתי נשכח